So fine, Vikings offensive coordinator Gary Kubiak dropped a bit of a Koob bomb this week when he was talking to the local media jackals about rookie second-round pick Ezra Cleveland working at some right guard. So there you go. Now, we talked about our reservations about him kicking in to guard in the first place. Now, it is notably talking about left guard, right? So that's the option and rumor that's been bandied about this offseason, where I think he is the left tackle of the future. I think it does make sense to kickstart him right away, but Kubiak has been adamant about keeping Riley Reif at left tackle, which with the offseason, understandable, as well as coaches do seem to tend toward teams to favor the veterans. But I mean, with Cleveland, 6'6", 310, you do worry about his anchor inside. You do worry about his leverage playing inside as well as play strength. Because, basically, can he battle against 330-pound nose tackles, right? And we talk about, there was some concerns about Brian O'Neill. Is he big enough? Is he stout enough? Can he hand up to NFL pressure? But also, there's a big difference between being a tackle where you're facing 260, 270-pound edge rushers, and when you're inside, rip snorting against 330-pound nose tackles. Like prime Linval Joseph, prime, 350-pound if he's an ounce, Damon Snacks Harrison. PJ Hall is pretty easy. But, I mean, it just is. It just is a big major difference. And also right guard versus left guard. So right guard traditionally has been that bruiser, that enforcer, that power side of the offensive line, right? So think back, Vikings days. Think of David Dixon. Think of Anthony Herrera, just big, stout, 350 if they're an ounce type dudes who you're gonna run behind, not that agile. Certainly, basically the polar opposite when it comes to offensive linemen of Ezra Cleveland. Both of those guys were right guards. Now, generally, again, we say generally, the right side of our offensive line is that power side. Left side of the offensive line, again, generally is the more athletic side, a little bit more finesse, even though you wouldn't call Randall McDaniel and Steve Hutchinson finesse. I fully understand that. But, especially left guard versus right guard, because left guard is generally going to be the one that pulls more often, since the strong side of the formation is generally more on the right. It's a lot of generalities going on, right? Now, I think we did make the mistake of overgeneralizing, for a boilerplate scheme, especially, maybe some of the early 90s, early 2000s Vikings out much more power, much more gap, as opposed to outside zone, which this team is quickly becoming. So going back to the 98 Broncos, where Gary Kubiak was the offensive mastermind, Mike Shanahan was just there. But the 98 Broncos, their two guards were Mark Stink Schlereth at the left guard spot, also former member of the Hawks in Washington. Also at right guard was Dan Neal, a longtime starter for the Broncos, pretty damn solid. Both of them were sub 300 pounds. They may have even been sub 280. Later on in the season, getting the work in, I don't know. As well as you couple that in with Tom Nalen, who probably played, 260, 270, maybe, right? So they put emphasis on light, athletic offensive linemen. Now, you could say that, it's just different. I mean, players were smaller back then. It's a generational issue. But remember, the 98 Vikings, they had Randall McDaniel, they had David Dixon, they had Corey Stringer. Dixon and Corey Stringer were the right side of the offensive line. Okay, R.I.P. Corey, by the way. So don't tell me it was generational. Where the same year the Vikings offensive line was probably, I don't know, almost 2,000 pounds total. Possible, right? But since it is the outside zone scheme, for the Broncos back in the day, it was Kubiak, it was Shanahan, it was Alex Gibbs, putting the premium on the lighter, agile, more athletic offensive lineman, sometimes at the sacrifice of brute strength. And I think you're starting to see that the Vikings personnel-wise are starting to do that. You see the addition of Garrett Bradbury, a little bit undersized, quick as hell. Brian O'Neill, who's more of an athlete than Phil Lodeholt at right tackle, right? And then also, if you do plug in Ezra Cleveland at right guard, look at that side of the line. So you got Bradbury, like we mentioned, the grim reacher, absolute athletic freak, might be the most athletic center in all of football. Then you got Ezra Cleveland, absolute physical specimen in his own right, and then you got Brian O'Neill. You got Brian friggin' O'Neill. That's the most athletic side of an offensive line in all of the NFL, and frankly, I think Gary Kubiak is pretty excited about that. Same thing with Rick Dennison. If we're talking about running primarily outside zone, just making sure that those bodies get to a 45-degree angle, get second level, and just be able to make reach blocks. That is it. That is absolutely it. Now, yes, do you sacrifice some one-on-one power? Do you sacrifice a little bit in anchor? Sure, but those are the trade-offs. You can't always have Leon. was gonna say Larry Allen, who's tree fitty, as well as probably the most one of the most athletic offensive linemen of the past 3 decades. Right? They don't come along every day. So, to be honest, I didn't even think about that much about Ezra Cleveland at right guard. But honestly, if it gets him on the field, like we've said before, whatever, so be it. I mean, play Ezra Cleveland at strong side linebacker for Anthony Barr. I don't really care. That may even be an upgrade. Just get Ezra Cleveland on the field and start getting him some experience as soon as possible. But your thoughts, Ezra Cleveland, right guard? Let us know in the comment section below. Subscribe for daily Vikings takes. You want to support that work? Pull us up in the Venmo. But until next time, Skol, production value.